Hello and welcome to this edition of Defacto Review, a weekly roundup of Mongolia's big stories. With me tonight, commentator and economist Jorgal Defacto.
Hello.
And I am Milena Mendes. We are live on Facebook at V Television and we would like to hear your thoughts. So on Twitter, use hashtag Jorgal_Defacto. Coming up on the show tonight, Batulga speaks out on his first 30 days in office. Disputes rocking MPP give rise to speculation for regime change. Mongolian mining expects profits up to $375 million. Pyongyang proposes direct flights to Mongolia amid rising nuclear tensions. Thank you for joining us. And tonight we're going to start with President Haltmas Batulga's first 30 days in office. He said he's not letting down on his war against so-called oligarchs and is seeking to shake up the status quo for the country. In his first interview since taking office in July, the new president said, quote, "There are only a few families sucking up Mongolia's economy, and I'm not going to reconcile with them," unquote. Batulga promised to return offshore money to Mongolia while launching large infrastructure projects such as the long-delayed railway line between coal mines in the Gobi Desert and China. He also dismissed proposed constitutional amendments that could take away some of the powers for his office, saying the Mongolian People's Party, quote, "has no right to change the constitution," unquote. So, Jorgal, what is your ideas on the first 30 days of the president?
Very interesting, impulsive interview that people were expecting, and he was in quite his style.
Right.
I would take 2 or 3 points on that. First, political points. That has to do with the governance of the country. For example, there was allegedly 60 billion tourist transactions coming from the selling of government positions, according to the revealed tape that the current head of the political party, who is the Speaker of the Parliament, was talking to another lower-ranking official in his political party. So that is regarded as a criminal case of selling public offices for money.
Right.
So that case is raised again, and also President Batulga said that people are coming to the power, to the government, to be rich, which is not acceptable. And also he said if the party is serious about corruption, they should start from revealing or disclosing their political party financing. That was the first point. The second point, he had asked foreign countries, organizations to help us to find out offshore accounts of high-ranking public officers. And he was given 49 days to those who had not yet reported their account abroad. The third thing he said in that governance issue, part of his speech, he said about tax, police, and other force organizations, enforcing organizations, have been pushing people in order to get information they wanted to have, not to them to follow what they wanted to do. So these three group of statements are serious about our political governance of the country. And you know, my take from these statements on the political issues is, if there was nothing new what he said, but if he is not going after changing the people who is at the head of these organizations, because it's our president role, or he must take initiative to change, replace, or renominate somebody onto those positions, which were recently changed actually with the winning of the ruling party last year. So we may expect another reshuffling of those people, and without those strong measures, I don't think he will achieve anything what he said just now about political reform he wants to see.
Well, the parliament hasn't met yet, but we can definitely say the president is already working.
Yes, and people are enforcing the parliament to go ahead with several things, changes, and in particular it has to do with now inside changes of the ruling party. And second issue about his interview was economic issue. He particularly want to address two issues, unemployment and poverty. How is he going to deal with unemployment? He said, we will change business environment first. Then he said, interestingly, through creating mega projects, new constructions, roads. Mongolians should make own roads because we import a lot of Chinese workers to do the job. And he said that through creating making these sort of big projects, we can create more jobs. The third, he said, we will use army for creating jobs, training people, soldiers, earning money when they go back. So this sort of approach, well, it is exactly not in the line of the International Hour Library Agreement, I think. But however, that's how he sees, because small country, small army, our army has not much sense against China and Russia. So he wants to use that as a kind of tools making unemployment addressed. The last one, he made a very interesting statement that we should produce our gold ourselves. We don't need foreigners for that. Not exactly foreigners, he said, but we need to produce our golds ourselves. What happens is Mongolia is probably approximately producing about 20 to 30 tons of gold, but only a half or less than 1/3 is coming to central bank. So the remaining, according to the president, is smuggling. So there's even a whole network is there. So that was his point.
That is a challenge right there. And what other unique challenges do you think the president will face compared to previous presidents?
It's a matter of, again, economic issue, and this is about poverty, not enough jobs, people are poor, 20% of country is poor. So in terms of his economic reform, he's suggesting is, I think at the end, depends on the private sector. And he had not addressed private sector very much in details, because at the end, private sector which makes jobs, not the state. So he may be either confusing or going on purpose, making bigger stick. The third point I'm taking about this interview is justice. And he suggested that Mongolian mining-rich people resign from the government, because some ministers he was referring to are people who have own deposits on ore or mining places, and he is against that. And he has again said, as you said, he will not reconcile with the people who are sucking the most fund or wealth of the country. The last one is about China and Russia. He said he will go to Russia East Forum in Vladivostok early September. About China, he said, why we cannot invite Dalai Lama, as he's our religious leader. And he will talk to China and Russia to decrease customs taxes to Mongolian goods. So some of them sounds realistic, some of them not, because Dalai Lama issue is not a Mongolian issue.
Right.
So that's why these are the four things I have taken from the interview.
So after this interview, where are we on the constitutional amendments?
In this interview, as you also mentioned earlier, he said if the constitutional amendment is about just to increasing or decreasing power of the three peaks of the power, we say the cabinets or parliaments, he said, I will not agree with this sort of amendments, he said. And also he said, a political party, the People's Party, who was selling public positions have no right to change amendments. That was his statement. So.
Right. So Moving on, still in politics, former Prime Minister Sanjay Bayar's name has been thrown in the pool for possible candidates to lead the government after what may be a loss of confidence in the Mongolian People's Party leader Miegom Enkbold. Speculation is high for a regime change in government following the devastating loss in a bid for the presidency by Parliament Speaker Enkbold, who trailed behind his competitor Haltma Batulga by nearly 10 points in the election. Bayar served as Prime Minister from 2007 to 2009, and with the signing of the Oyu Tolgoi investment agreement being a highlight during his post. So, as the new Prime Minister seems the most likely outcome with Enkbold's loss of favor from his party, is it a good timing for a regime change now, just after receiving a bailout from the IMF and electing a new president?
Of course, change of the cabinet is not very good sign for the stability of political and economic stability in the country, but it seems to me it is coming, mostly coming because the People's Party, a lot members suggesting also changing of the cabinet. You know, for government change, cabinet change, they need quarter of parliament votes, seats. Out of 76, they need 19. But however, by today, they got already 26 of own members suggesting of changing the cabinet. And more than that, the source says that next Wednesday, the executive committee of the People's Party will have meeting, which will discuss the reason of their loss at the presidential elections, and also they will convey their party congress in September. They may even convey it earlier. The reason is also another issue of with the current prime minister and with current deputy prime minister. In between them, allegedly on social media, the fight is going on for power, and deputy prime minister Hurrisuk informed officially the enforcement agencies that he was being followed for last many days, 2-3 weeks, and more than that. Somebody's made an interview on social media and then on TV that he had received task to follow him, to provoke him for fight so that his name goes down, and he was promised certain money, 50 million tuarigs for that provocation. And at the end he did a lot, but he was paid after 2 or 3 weeks only 1 million, and that's why he was informing. But if it was just the ordinary guy from the street, one issue, but this white guy was a policeman, former. And then what happened? This man is arrested after 2 days of his statement. Not only him, but also a colonel, a police colonel, Mr. Amar Sana, who turned out to be a cousin of the Prime Minister Hurrisuk, and another colonel. So these 3 arrests somehow give at least impression to ordinary Mongolians that this Hurrisuk is himself provoked all this thing so that they have attention. But actually people don't believe in that because more parliament members are voting against the current power. So there is something wrong inside of the cabinet, inside of the political party. So we will see. But my conclusion out of all this thing is big questions. Police, anti-corruption agency, and all enforcement agencies, are they doing for justice all these actions, or are they doing just for sake of politicians they need or they are forced to favor for? So that's the concern of ordinary Mongolians. And I think it will be very clear down the road, very shortly, in particular next week, most probably next week. And there is a growing concern and fights among political leaders inside of political elites of the People's Party. And several fractions are coming to the point, and one of them may suggest Mr. Bayar to be Prime Minister, the head of the political party. And
how do you think that may affect the economy or even the investors' confidence?
Certainly, it depends now on who is coming and what will be the outcome of that executive board meeting of this party. Because if they come with the conclusion that they will hold responsible those who had tried to bribe, who had tried to sell public officers, if it is a strong party, they may come to the public with certain correction of their mistakes, certain clear statement they will not do it, and also, I mean, somehow the conflicts inside is so big that in this or that form it is to be come down. Right. Otherwise, this political tensions is no good. As you said, now we are in the bailout of International Monetary Fund. We are just, economy is doing better, not because we are doing better, but just because China is buying more coal, about which we will talk at the next item.
Right.
But big expectation of people from the ruling party that they will come out with very clear, understandable, clear strategy, short-term, certain tactics to make better.
And we know there have been some allegations of corruption against Bayard regarding the Oyutolgoi, right? The agreement. I mean, is there any credibility for these accusations?
People will raise the issues again. Bayard was mostly had to resign from his post as ambassador to the UK, also because the high pressure from the people on these issues. Why? On this OT issues, they're raising the issue. The other issue is his unexplained properties in the US. And the current president in the interview, he was referring to Nawaz Sharif in Pakistan, a former prime minister, who was also resigned because the issue of his children's wealth in the UK. So there is a growing awareness of Mongolians that we should not tolerate any more high-ranking public officers' corruptions. So let's see what will be the decisions of the enforcement agencies. But we know one thing. As ordinary Mongolian, we would say that two our political parties are both corrupt, and their fight, in this case, for example, will continue to a certain level only until they agree not to go any more deeper.
Any deeper.
Because they will more raise certain things, they will find each other inside of each criminal cases. So I think it's a relatively big storm in the glass of water. But however, it is a little step forward, better democracy.
Right. We mentioned about coal, so moving on to speaking, Hong Kong-listed Mongolian Mining Corporation is said to record between $250 and $375 million in profits for the first half of the year, possibly beating its market capitalization of $370 million. The Gobi Desert coal miner in August 10th reported improved coking coal market conditions, resulting in higher revenue generated in a statement given preliminary results. A full report on production results is expected later this month. So, Jargal, this kind of profits, does it signal any kind of turnaround for Mongolia's coal?
Yes, in certain way. Why? Because Mongolia is exporting more coal this year. This year we most probably will export 30 million tons of coal, but with less revenue than we have been selling in 2011. We were selling 20 million tons coal to China, but we got $2.2 billion for that. But this year, 30 million tons of coal, and we will get about $2 billion US. And one of the largest player in that is this MMC, Hong Kong listed company, as you have referred. Yes, they are making this year, first half of the year, about 300 or more million US dollar profit, but it turned out this profit is accounting profit. which is coming from restructuring of their debt. They had a huge sum of bonds, 500 million US dollar. Now it is now only 400 million US dollar. Now their payment is less, interest rate is less, and this $100 million is connected with convertibility of that debt, and certain part of it went as an equity, and certain rewards if the prices are changed or the revenue is changed, they have been paying in different form. So it's mostly accounting profit, and actual profit, it may be 3-4 times less than this 300 or so million US dollar. But some information about this MMC, which is mostly owned by a Mongolian large conglomerate called MCS, and others are Mongolian companies. And this is listed in Hong Kong, as I said. Now its market capitalization is around 370 million US dollar. According to Hong Kong Stock Exchange last Friday, whole day change of the price was 14% up, though the price is very small. The price is 0.285 Hong Kong dollar per share, but it is increased 14%, as I said. The company employs 1,887 employees, and they produce 2 open pit, which is called either Uhahotag or Barunarang from Tavan Tolga, which is the big deposit of coking coal in the south of Mongolia.
Right. But how are they doing compared to this state-owned Tavan?
Briefly, there are 3-4 companies there. State-owned Tavan Tolga is selling a price at the pit, about $60 US per ton. Meanwhile, the same grade of coal on the east side of China, $270 per ton. The difference comes for the truck transportation, further transportation on the territory of China. So the logistics is very expensive. Right. So that's the reason why we are pushed to make a railway in between Tavan Tolga and to the border, which is still one of the projects that the current president, when he was a former Minister of Transport, he started the project. Very controversial. Some people were arrested, put into prison because this study and because there's certain mismanagement. But looks like Mongolia is going to forget that, and they will go with the project. But back to this coking coal, you asked this state-owned Tavan Tolga companies there, but they are selling at that price I just mentioned at the auction price. But the concern of people is that this Tavan Tolga, state-owned Tavan Tolga, is digging and taking only the best part of the ore. They are leaving aside the worse or less concentrate, which is illegal, because in our mining law, we should produce equally everything so that we produce the most of the mine. So that's one concern. The second concern is, out of, say, all exports we have done now, half is made by the state-owned Tavan Tolga. The remaining half is divided by local Tavan Tolga, which is owned by local people. And another one is this MMC. We should also, you asked me about the price of coal, the situation of coal export. Mongolia, from this year, first time we export brown coal to China for electric usage, for power, electric power. And the reason is China has now, in spite of the restrictions of import of raw coal, they need now more energy because their hydro energy is not functioning sufficiently. So the missing part is replaced by coal from the nearest country, which is Mongolia. So fueled by this demand, Mongolia is exporting more coal than before, but with less income.
Right. Well, we still have another topic to talk about tonight. Pyongyang has proposed the launch of direct flights to Mongolia as US President Donald Trump and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un square off and nuclear tensions rise. Mongolia has maintained good relations with North Korea with an embassy in Ulaanbaatar, despite disputes with the West and Asian countries in the region, Mongolia has chartered flights to North Korea for diplomatic visits, but has never before had any regular transportation. So is it a good idea to consider given the brinkmanship between United States and North Korea right now?
Well, it's a separate issue. It's separate also because Mongolia has diplomatic relations with both Korea. The reason is after the Korean Wars, many children were adopted by Mongolian families in Ulaanbaatar. They were brought from North Korea. They grown up here, they speak Mongolian, they go back, they do their now whatever they do jobs, but that life relations between people are there, which was the base of keeping diplomatic relations with North Korea. And we had no reason to cut our relations even after becoming a democratic country. So Mongolia is a place where North Korea, people comes, even the workers come to work, and now maybe after the recent UN sanctions it will be stopped, but somehow there is certain human relations between two countries, and it is not surprised that the Civic Aviation Authority Deputy Director of North Korea, Ri Yong-song, had a visit to Mongolia last week where we had Asian Civil Aviation Authorities annual conference, during which the South Korea suggested to have a direct flight. I understand they suggested to several other countries to have a direct flights. I'm not sure if the direct flights are included into the embargo or the sanction or not, but however, that's the fact they have suggested. I mean, in spite of everything, if there is a flight, Mongolia will be one of the bridge to fly to North Korea, and Mongolians don't need visa to North Korea.
Right.
So, but situation is like this. But let's see.
How do you think Mongolia has managed to keep this good relationship with North Korea, whereas its relations with nearly almost all the other nearby countries?
Because this human relations, as I told you, after the war, and because also there were certain economic cooperation quite for a long time until the changes in 1990 in this country. So there is a tradition. There are traditions that we follow. That's probably the reason, and also we are interested to be a part of rational dialogue to make the world a better place. Northeast Asia is China, Japan, two Koreas, and Mongolia. So we need to have a nice time, good time, peaceful time, not war, nothing to say about this nuclear war,
right.
The nuclear rockets that may change. It's very bad.
Right. Mongolia has a special role to play here. This is what we have for you tonight. Jorgel, do you have any last comments?
Yeah, well, thank you again being with us. We try to make this independent from politicians review in the country every week at 7 o'clock in Mongolian, at 8 o'clock in English. And you can see that also from tomorrow on our website, jargaldefacto.com. Thank you very much for being with us. A good night.
I am Milena Mendes, and thank you for staying with us tonight. Have a good week.
Bye.
Bye.
Good.